It is time for our lunchtime devotion. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. Hey, Jules. It's time for our lunchtime devotion. Grab your Bibles, grab your lunch, grab your book if you got it. Let's get in there. Let's get into this 28-day journey. I don't remember pressing that button twice. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hey, guys. Good afternoon. It is time for our lunchtime devotion. Grab your Bibles. Hey, Ellis. Good to see you. Hey, Edna. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hey, hey, hey. Tell all your friends. Get your friends on. Share it if you can. Share it to somebody specific. Good afternoon. Hey, hey, hey. Oh, thank you, Jesus, that you have won again. Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hey, hey. Hey, Danny. Hey, Ashia. Hey, Lisa. Thank you, Sister Edna. We need it, man. I need all the prayers we can. Good afternoon. Ellis. Call after the show, please. Edna, do I have your number? You might have to DM it to me, please. And I'll try to see what I can do. Good afternoon. And help my unbelief, so I can tell all my freedom. Y'all better sing it. It's time for our lunch devotion. Tell the Lord He won it again. You have won again. You have won again. You have won again. Let's get into our lunchtime devotion for today. Hey, Gabs. Hey. Let's get into it for this afternoon. Okay, so this is like day 9, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't know. It's one of these days on our 28-day journey. I lost count. But it's one of the days in our 28-day journey, and we are picking up from yesterday. This week we have been focusing on rejection and the toxin of rejection and what that does in our relationships with God and what it does in our life, how certain wounds that haven't been healed in our lives begin to alter our relationship with the Lord. You know, it alters whether we see sin in our lives, persistent, sin. It could cause persistent sin and, problems such as that. Also, we see that it can cause depression in believers, and I am a firm believer that the Lord wants us all to be healed, okay? Truly healed. Okay. A firm believer that He wants us to be healed. So let's get into today's devotional topic if we can really quickly. So we're picking up on rejection, okay? And if you guys are familiar, we've been looking at the toxin of rejection, and it gets its strength, as we talked about, from doubt. Okay. Hey, Mother Bell. Hey, Danny. Hey, Lisa. It gets its strength from doubt. Okay. And that's paramount. We wouldn't connect those off the top, but as we've learned, rejection isn't necessarily a way of thought. It's not a conclusion. Okay. But it is a feeling of a question, what is wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? Is there something about me that everybody else sees that I can't see? Is makes me unacceptable. That's rejection. Rejection. Hey, Glenda. rejection is a question. It's an unanswered question that continually performs and produces doubt in our lives. And that's pretty much where we left off. My shirt is rising up and doing this weird thing, trying to be over here stylish, but look, it's not working. Okay, so that's where we left off. We also learned that rejection doesn't necessarily have to be a point of what's the word I'm looking for, of trauma. That a person could experience rejection and have deep-rooted issues with rejection, and it's not because of a particular drama in their lives, okay, but it's over a consistent stacking of small little things. Hey, Rashida. Hey, Sheila. Good to see you guys. But it's it could be a stacking of persistent, nitpicky things. You know, you weren't picked for this team, you weren't picked for that, you weren't picked for this man, you weren't picked for this woman, your marriage didn't work, you know, those kind of, and over time, you weren't picked for this promotion. Over time, these things could stack up. We also looked at the idea that rejection may not necessarily be from a trauma. It could be, you could be predisposed to doubt, okay? To doubting and side-eyeing relationships, doubting and side-eyeing people's genuineness. You call it discernment, you call it being a realist, you know. But some people, character-wise and personality-wise, can be predisposed to doubt and a lack of trust, and they're just born that way. And that then leads to deep-rooted feelings, and could lead to deep-rooted feelings of rejection. Could, okay? So whether you were born with a personality trait that made you side-eye everybody, whether you were born with a personality trait that was predisposed to negativity, you know, you're not an optimist, you're a realist, you know, or a pessimist, you know, or if you experience trauma, you know, that left you answering what is wrong, asking the question, what is wrong with me? Or if over time, you know, these things started stacking up. Hey, Tanya, good to see you. Woman of God, miss you so much. But either way, you could be predisposed to those things, or it could be something about your environment or how you're raised, or it could be a trauma. Okay, why do I say all that? Because sometimes people deal with rejection, deep-rooted rejection, and it wasn't because of a trauma, or it's just how their brain works, or it could have been something that just stacked up over time, where now you're constantly asking this question, what is wrong with me? And as other people notice what's wrong with me, and that's why I'm not picked, is that why I didn't get picked for the job? Is that why that boy didn't call me? Is that why that girl didn't call me? Because they see something about me that I can't see about myself. And we looked at this on last week, that generally pushes us towards the idea of comparison. Most people don't admit this publicly, but we deal a lot with comparison. And when you compare yourself to other people, as we looked at on last week, this constant comparison. Also, that's what a good Christian looks like. Then I need to do that. That's what nice people do, so I need to do that. That's what people that are liked say. That's what people that get married do. People that are picked, that are proposed to, this is what they do. This is what, you know, women want. This is what men want. And this constant comparison is a form of rejection of yourself, you know, that you're constantly trying to, hey, Shamika, good to see you, sweetheart. You're constantly trying to figure out a way that will make you more accepted. In essence, you're asking the questions, what is wrong with me that I need to adjust or fix? Wednesday night was our Bible study night, and you know, we had this topic, and it came up again from one of our members. The idea of, well, and even yesterday's conversation, don't we want to fix what's wrong with us? And that in itself leaves the question constantly that something is wrong with me as to why I don't look like everybody else, why my life isn't going the way everybody else's life is going, why I didn't get married, why I didn't get picked, why I didn't have this job, why it must be something wrong with me. And we're constantly comparing those that we admire to say, this is what I need to look like, this is how I need to sound, this is how I need to talk. And in essence, you're still dealing in rejection. You can call it a self-help if you want, you know, but it's still a form of something is not right. Just as we talked about that control is a form of rejection, comparison is a form of rejection, you know, and these are both things that you could do to yourself. If you compare, you're rejecting who you are and doubting who you really are as being sufficient. And then you try to overly control these areas of your life in order to match what you compared yourself to. Okay, I got to stop doing that because people that really love God don't do that. And I got to stop doing that because people that really want to get married one day don't look like that, and they don't act like that, and they don't sound like that. And I don't want people to think I'm an angry black woman, so I'm going to take my pitch really high and talk like this so that everybody would think that I am very warming and inviting, and I'm not like that other angry black woman. All these things of comparison that we think will somehow win us. Yeah, I went there, right? Will win us some level of acceptance because we've been comparing ourselves and saying that we don't fit what is necessary or what is being accepted in a certain area for that job, for that marriage, for that career, for that look, okay? And then we start to overly control ourselves. Now that's self-induced, but it could also be someone else induced that. Someone else tried to control. We talked about those who have been released and freed and healed from cults, Christian cults, that there's a form of rejection and control, that a person doesn't truly accept you because they're always trying to make sure you do exactly what they say, how they say it, and if you don't, they don't fool up with you anymore. They push you aside, they leave you alone. That is in essence control and manipulation, and that is a form of rejection. Now this is something that can happen externally. I'm just trying to cover a lot of bases from yesterday because I said the review today was going to be a little thick, okay? Hey, Glenda Edwards, good to see you. All right. So all of these are aspects of rejection. Okay. And again, remember, it could be from a trauma, but in very few cases is it. But it's probably over a very consistent, persistent thing that happens that keeps stacking in your life, and it's a real thing. So rejection forms, in most cases, rebellion. At some point, the control gets too much. You're trying to be that perfect person. You're trying to be that perfect wife, be that perfect husband, be that perfect friend, be that perfect minister, be that perfect Christian, trying to make sure that you do what is necessary to always be accepted. Even if you impose that upon yourself, eventually it explodes into rebellion. And that's why I say most issues that Christians are seeing persistent sin, every season or so, persistent fights and anger and agitation and depression. These are indications, fruit, that there is a wound that is not made well, and you've just learned to live with it. Sheena says rejection forms rebellion, 100%. And it's not just the rejection of it, it's the idea of control that comes with the rejection. Someone imposing that on you, or you imposing it on yourself in order to be truly accepted. But the strength, as we talked about, of rejection is in what? Do you remember? Doubt. A lack of trust, and we talked on earlier this week that you have to start with what do you know 100% about God. Anchor there and then start building from that. I know that God forgives my sins. I know that, and I don't doubt that. And then keep listing the things about God that you don't doubt. While you may not see how effective this is in solving your overall problem, it will be made known to you when you start. Okay, so let's continue with the idea of rejection, and let's continue with the idea of doubt. So you guys know we were dealing with the story of Johnny, okay? And Johnny was a young boy when he was seduced by an older woman, and during that process of seduction, her brother came in and raped Johnny when he was a child, and this has left an imprint. And we've used that story. We're using the story of Johnny and his wife Jenny. Of course, these are pseudo names for a real testimony and life story. We're using their interaction and what happened in their lives as a template to understand certain aspects of this toxin and the wounds that these toxins can create. Okay, so Johnny, we already covered this. Johnny dealt with shame. He dealt with making sure that we label what it is and what it isn't. Johnny dealt with unforgiveness and trying to forgive these individuals. And now we're looking at rejection. And this particular case, we focus more on Jenny than Johnny in terms of rejection. Johnny pretty much wanted to wall himself in, okay, to not let anyone into a certain point. He felt like, and this is something I thought the author pulled out that was very, very good. that he felt that, in essence, if I could keep this secret, this deep, dark secret, this shameful thing that happened to me, and we looked at that the shame, yes, the event was shameful, but the shame is not his. It's the person that abused him. The shame belongs to them. But, in Johnny's mind, the idea of keeping this secret, not telling anybody that I'm the type of person that this could happen to, because it would indicate that some aspect of what they said about me might be true. I'm the type of person that somebody just ran up and just hit me, so this must mean I'm kind of weak or naive, or I'm the type of person that was raped, or maybe, I'm weak and I'm stupid, or I wanted it. There's always an attachment of lies there. But nevertheless, Johnny had to deal with trying to let his wife in, and he built up walls. And it's something the author says here. He says hiding had become a mental habit for Johnny. And that's what happens. We begin to hide from people that we should be able to really love on. Thank you for heartening it up, guys. I appreciate it. And should love on us. We don't call it lying. And I like what the author says. It wasn't lying. It was just separation. It's like, I'm not lying to my wife. This is just proper for me to keep this to myself, and you to keep that, and that's just proper, When I first got into one of my most loving relationships, in preparation for marriage, I remember deciding that if anyone I felt like could be a good candidate for marriage, I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm going to be brutally honest, and I'm going to tell them exactly everything, that my worst secrets. All right. Now, I don't recommend everybody do this. I'm crazy. Okay. But I said, if I recognize that this thing could go the distance, I am going to have the courage enough to say the worst and the most nastiest thing. And I've got some bad things I've done in my life. Right. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to talk about the rape. I'm going to talk about being molested. I'm going to talk about, abominable sex. I'm going to talk about all of the stuff, smoking weed. I'm going to talk about drinking. I'm going to talk about everything I ever did that was wrong. Okay. And this is my mindset. If that person can take that and move forward, we might have something. But if I feel that I have to hide that because this person begins to make me feel uneasy or ashamed or less than because of some of the stuff that I said, then I automatically knew you're not for me. And I didn't want a relationship or a marriage that could be built off of me having to hide myself, and then I would decide I am not going to hide how much I love Jesus. Now that's tough, because out here in these Atlanta streets, I don't know where you live, but in these Atlanta streets, these Christians out here having sex on the regular. It's like a part of Christianity. It's like, oh, you love Jesus, me too, take your clothes off. And all of my friends that are out here dating, they're like, Pastor, you get out here in this dating world, they will leave you high and dry the minute you say you don't have sex. Because to them, it's just a normal part of relationships. So the girls will feel, inclined not to necessarily say how much they love Jesus, But, most of my members are already at the point they just say it, and the men scatter. Every date ends pretty much, or is an attempt to continue to press them to give up the goods, right? And so the idea here is I decided I wasn't even going to hide how much I love Jesus. I wasn't going to hide how passionate about God and church I was in order to not, push him away. And these were real things. And in Johnny's case, the young man that we're using as a case study of being raped, by another man and humiliated, by his sister, is just gut-wrenching, because you could tell he wanted to keep separation. He wanted to hide, and it became a norm for him. And he didn't call it lying. He just called it being, proper. Everybody don't need to know I dealt with it. I ain't got to bring that up in my marriage. But that wall, in terms of trying to be proper and nice, like a good neighbor, okay, that wall also walled him in. Brother Wesley says, amen, let it flow. Well, amen. I try to hide myself all the time. Jules says on Instagram. Exactly. So we get to the point where it just becomes a way of life. Like, this is just not everybody's business. And then I can understand it not being everybody's business, but it should be somebody's business. And that's what we're going to look at today. It may not be everybody's business, but there should be someone in your life whose business it is, and they can handle it. and they still love you in spite of it. And we've convinced ourselves that there doesn't exist anyone that could do that. So we doubt that anyone could handle that. So we continue to live hidden. And that's really where we're going to look at. That's what we're picking up today. So he just believed that, it wasn't lying. It was just separation. And that's the way he likes it. Now his wife, Johnny ended up going to counseling because he lost his job as a big time CEO. Because he kept having bouts of depression and anger, and we looked at this earlier in this series, that the way he used to handle things as a child, he can't handle that way now. He's an adult, and there's consequences and repercussions, okay, for handling things. Somebody told me, "Oh, Pastor, I'm so glad. I don't like it when people, because I say the curse word. I know, I shouldn't say curse words. Please don't nail me to the cross. It happened." And so somebody said to me, "Pastor, back in the day, somebody said a curse word, them was fighting words. And even to today, I'll fight somebody if they say a curse word to me." And I said, "Do you know you grown?" They was like, "Yeah, I'm grown." I was like, "You can't fight nobody over words as an adult. You can go to jail. This is not kid stuff. I ain't going to jail. Yeah, you can go to, that's assault. You better let words go. But they hurt. Whatever, they don't hurt as much as jail time." So, anyway, let's just now we focus on the idea of rejection. And when we talked earlier, remember Jenny had her own battle, okay? So anyway, let's just now we focus on the idea of rejection. And when we talked earlier, remember Jenny had her own battle, okay? She was raised in a household where both her parents were distant, and a little bit of functioning alcoholics to a certain extent, No, that was the other lady. Jenny, they were just distant and not very affectionate. And so it became the idea. I know everybody was like, "Oh my God, the pastor admitted to cursing." I'm telling, yes, I did. I'm sorry. I don't think you should use the Lord's name in vain, but Lord, I can't even go into that. The Lord's name in vain has nothing to do with what types of expletives you use. It means that don't say that you believe in God in vain with your mouth, but don't live it. That's really what it is. But let's just move on. I can't. All right. I don't recommend people cursing because it looks bad. It's improper. But between that and shooting somebody, say the doggone curse word. Okay. See, that's what I'm talking about. Y'all go over here. Y'all going to control yourselves to doggone rebellious. You're going to over control yourself, trying to fit the norm that everybody expects in Christianity, and it's going to backfire. Be easy on yourself, all right? I know I'm not condoning it. The Lord said it's wrong. It doesn't look good. I'll try to be nice. Okay, let's move on. So in Jenny's case, the whole attention was on Johnny. Johnny was the one raped. Johnny is the one that's suicidal. Johnny is the one that is struggling with this. Johnny is the one that is dealing with that. Thank you, Mother Bell, for laughing it up, because some of these folks, they be like, "Oh no, she did." The pastor, look, I may say a curse word here and there, but I ain't drinking, I ain't getting drunk, I ain't smoking, I ain't having sex on the side, I'm not watching no porn, I'm not doing no crack, I'm not stealing no money, I'm not embezzling. If you don't like my words, I understand. I'll try to do better. But there are far worse things than that, in my opinion. Maybe I'll grow out of it. When I get 75, I'll have such a tempered tongue that I can say exactly what I mean in such a way that no one is offended. Thank you, Ashia. Okay, so let's move on. I know I lost so many friends on that one. It's all right. They'll be back. So Jenny was suffering quietly because most of it was about Johnny, and he was the one that was really going through. And this is still a problem. Thank you, Ashia, for joining me in the I Still Curse group. I can't with y'all. Go over there, Bishop. Okay. But when it came to her counseling, and she needed counseling, she admitted that her childhood, she didn't get any affection in childhood. There wasn't any hugging. There wasn't any kissing. She said one of her saddest memories that she could recall was reading a book about how a mother sang to her child as she combed her hair, and how she could never imagine her mother singing to her, and she told the counselor, it made her tear up. And so the counselor said, "You mean no one was ever affectionate?" She said, "No, my mother, we never said I love you. They never hugged me or anything like that." "Bishop, I cannot be affectionate to you right now. I have to work. Say hi." "Okay, let me hug you." See, give you too much affection. Oh, I love you. Oh my goodness. Oh, now go. I knew it. See, you don't like that. You don't like super affection. Okay. So in this case, Jenny never received a hug. She never received a kiss. She never received, anything that was affectionate. It was kind of like very distant. It wasn't I love yous all the time, and in essence, she kind of lived, a life of rejection. Sheena says, hey, he just wants to be on the program. I know he'd be wanting to be on the program, sweetie. Okay, so lingering kisses eventually in her marriage, this was played an effect in how she felt in intimacy in her marriage. Lingering kisses made her apprehensive. And that's a big deal. Lingering kisses made her apprehensive. Signs of affection and intimacy, a fear of intimacy, made her less enthusiastic about sex. This is a real thing. In essence, her childhood was one long rejection. All right. Hey, Tawanda. And that's a real thing. Are you guys still with me on Facebook? Okay, cool. My camera keeps doing a weird thing, so I just want to make sure you guys are there. But her whole childhood was just one long episode of rejection. So it wasn't necessarily a traumatic event. It was just constantly looking for a hug or a kiss. Her parents worked hard. They provided for her, but man, they didn't attend her games. They didn't support her, in terms of loving kindness. She says, she recounted a story that once her brother said something to her mom, and her mom chuckled, a very warm laugh, which is rare for her mother, and when she asked as a kid, hey mom, what are you laughing at? Her mother, without even looking, said, it doesn't concern you, with an exclamation point. And then she said, well, mom, can I go with you and my brother? And she said, no, you can't go, and just didn't even look back and walked out. To Jenny at that time, that was a continuation of rejection. Not being accepted, that there was a laughter, but it doesn't include me because laughter isn't for me. There could be a hug. You could be in the household where your mom hugged men but never hugged you, where, they took care of other people's families, with love and what it seemed niceness and warmth, but not yours. You were the problem. You were the burden, or it could be the opposite. You're a son and didn't really receive affection from your dad because he didn't want you to be soft, He wants you to be tough. And these are all aspects of just extended periods of rejection in our lives. Hey, it's been too long. How you doing? That's a great author right there. He's got a book coming out in December. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or Periscope, check out It's Been Too Long on Instagram. He's got some great projects out there. He's a wonderful man of God. Okay, so let's continue. So she just had a lot of cold separation. And it was tough as a childhood. Then she married Johnny, who also had his own problems. And this is funny because when you read the book, we're somewhere around page 102 in the book, but when you read it, you recognize she ended up getting into a marriage that resembled her childhood. Are you guys still there on Facebook? Okay, I'm just making sure you guys are still there. Can y'all heart it up or something? Let me know. She ended up in a marriage that resembled her childhood. Now, I'm sure on the beginning, on the onset, that's not what she thought she was getting into. She thought she was getting into a relationship and a marriage that will be very warm and affectionate. How do you end up being attracted to the very thing that hurt you? I mean, who does that, right? I mean, should you already have enough experiences back then to steer away from that? Not necessarily. See, the thing about focusing on what you think is lacking, you will look for the external signs that thing is not what you're getting. You'll look for the external signs that it's not abusive. You'll look for the external signs, just how we say you try to overly control in order to fit what you think is accepting, what is acceptable. Well, you start looking for people that are doing the same thing, that are only doing the outward signs of what is acceptable. Hey, Brother Wesley. And you don't even have a clue to see what is internally that needs to be seen. Hey, he did this. That's something my dad never did. She did that. That's something my mom never did. And this is what you're looking for, are these external signs, right? And just below the surface, if you could just go below the surface, you'd see you about to get set up for the exact same thing that you hated about your childhood. And that's the case with Johnny and Jenny. Johnny had a deep wall up and separation, and he thought he could maintain that. And he probably was very good at showing affection to a certain extent, but not intimacy. And that's where it gets sticky. Hey, Uncle Bruce, God gave you the word oops for curse words that you regularly use before. That's cool, Edna. Thank you. Oops. I'll keep that in mind. Amen. So, nevertheless, emotional distance and for Johnny trying to show himself was painful. To reveal that part of him to his wife that he had never done before was very hard. And self-revelation could be absolutely agonizing to people, and I get that. So Johnny eventually had to tell his wife really what happened to him and let that wall come down. And that's huge, because most of the time we're afraid that they won't accept the dirt part, because this is what I've done. This is the worst thing.